want you to pause a moment, and I want you to think about one thing you would change about yourself, or one thing that you would do different starting tomorrow. I'm talking to you today about moving boundaries. We've all seen inspirational quotes that point us in the direction of moving that boundary, or changing, dream big, or embrace failure, expect success. There's actually overwhelming evidence that suggests that none of those work, and the majority of us actually never do those things. Take, for instance, New Year's resolutions. Only 8% of us actually move our boundaries. 92% eventually give up and never change. Our physical activity, with the overwhelmingly increase in obesity, we still have 40% are only moving their boundaries. 60% just stand still, continue to get obese and not change. Work engagement. Can you imagine only 70% are disengaged in the workplace? The Gallup poll in 2013 suggests this. 30% are actually moving their boundaries there. In relationships and marriage, with the 50% divorce rate, of those that are married, only 54% are considered moving their boundaries. The remaining 20% lack courage to move on, or 29% are not recommending marriage at all. So with all those inspirational quotes, why are we standing still? So there's three things that we're going to engage in tonight. I'm going to explain to you what you're going to experience while you're trying to move those boundaries. So being a Marine, part of this is being pushed. Now, just being a Marine, you may not want to move your boundaries, but they're going to force you to move those boundaries. And they're going to bring you to a place of success. And you may want to fail just to get out, but they won't let you fail because you trust these people. Other examples of being pushed would be parents pushing their children, teachers pushing their students. Either way, we've all been in a role in a situation where we've been pushed. After being pushed, you may experience being a soloist. You've moved on. You've learned some of the skill sets that are required to move those boundaries, and we're going to test those on our own. Whether that be physical, emotional, maybe a career path, you will eventually become a soloist and have the opportunity to move those boundaries on your own. And you'll have no one to answer to but yourself. When you look in the mirror, are you being honest? Are you staying accountable? What happens when you fail? You're just going to fail yourself. So we find a way personally to move those boundaries. So after you've been pushed and you've taken some time to beat the soloist, it's time to move on to the next place, which is you're doing the pushing. So doing the pushing examples are coaches, teachers, drill instructors now. You are doing the pushing. Now the interesting part about doing the pushing is it's not about you anymore. You put yourself aside and selflessly provide a backdrop and a path for those that are trusting you to guide them to success. Because it's scary to go out and be vulnerable and try to push that boundary and fail. The more times you fail, how often do you want to try that again? So having the honor of doing the pushing is a big responsibility. Quick story, I just come back from doing 7 marathons in 6 days this past spring in the Sahara. And there was, it was an individual event, there was no teams. But we had shared tents. So you were amongst other people pushing their boundaries, soloists. And I tried my best not to be emotionally involved with everybody else's goals, because I do that on a daily basis. However, there was second to last event, there was a 50-mile stage. And one person in a tent was suggesting that he was going to quit. And it wasn't really worth it. He was tired and he wanted to finish. He was going to quit. And there was another woman in the tent who felt the same way. And because this big mouth was promoting failure, promoting quitting as an easy way out, you could see what was happening with her, being on the edge. She was moving toward his energy, and I couldn't stand for it. So I suggested to her, that, listen, you have one more day. Once you finish this 50-mile day, you have one more day to go. It's all downhill from there. And she listened, not to the negative person who finished early, quit. But she took an example of someone who was promoting her to continue to push and seek out that boundary. And she finished. And she was happy. So once we have these three things down, so we know what the pusher is, we know what being pushed means, and we know what the soloist is. It's time to move on to actually moving those boundaries. So what I present you here is my boundary solar system. In that center, you have your boundary. And that boundary is your anxiety neutral place. And that anxiety neutral is your safe place. This is the place where you've collected other opportunities and try to expand that boundary. But that anxiety neutral place is your somewhat of a comfort zone. It's where you minimize risk. It's where it's comfortable. It's where you're less vulnerable. It is your safe place. And over time, you're going to want to move that boundary. So those little squiggly lines that I had drawn to reaching out for those different goals, that is your journey. And those journeys are not linear. Up and down, sideways, loops. It's like being backwards on a GPS. The GPS will just point you in the right direction. But when you return back to your boundary, that boundary zone, it's grown. You've changed your perspective, and you've gained courage to go attack another goal and expand that boundary. And along those paths, you will meet a person who will push you. You will be the soloist, and you will be pushed. All at the same time. And it's those who listen to the positive energy and those who enjoy promoting success that's going to help you get to where you want to be. So how do we define moving our boundaries now? We know what it looks like. How do we do it? What's the next step? So I suggested at the very beginning, I want you to pick a goal or something you want to change. I call this process ACE, which is assessing why you want to move, choosing what that goal is going to be, and then the execution. Now the assessing is all individual. You have to determine why it's important for you. What is it that's what's going to motivate me to do something different? Once you've made that assessment and you believe in it, it's time to choose. And choosing that goal is important. How far away is that goal from what you're comfortable doing? If it's too far and you overreach, the anxiety level becomes too high and you risk failure. Anxiety too low, you'll never leave. So what you're looking for is this optimal anxiety that allows you to expand that boundary, assume some risk, and to be vulnerable, and search for that new beginning. So once you choose what that goal is, it's time to execute. And the execution is the most important part. All too often, we start this journey, but then don't complete it, like the gentleman in that tent. We all say to ourselves, we're so busy. Is that a cop-out? Or are we really too busy to change? But all of us say it. We have 24 hours in a day, and we seemingly find enough things to do. How could you imagine adding one more thing to the list? But you're going to. And you've got to create space for that. So when you're executing, always remember what the original step was, which was assessing why you want to do it. And if you ever felt badly about completing that task or accomplishing that goal, reach out for help. Seek out someone who will help you and be positive with you. Become accountable. Look in the mirror and say, I'm going to do this. And when it gets tough, you know you have three options: the soloist, the pusher, and then being pushed. So I hope after today, you get to answer that question for yourself. Tomorrow, you start a new journey. Thank you.